During this period, the build-up of forces generally favored the Central Powers. Four new German armies, the 11th, 12th Army, the Nijmegen Army, and the Army of the Bug, were formed. Given the steady erosion of the Russian army combat power due to poor administration and the system of reinforcements, particularly for officers, were drastically shifted to balance the power in the eastern theater of the Central Powers' favor. In 13 Central Powers armies faced 9 under-strength Russian armies. Under pressure from the Kaiser, Falkenhayn gave Hindenburg and Ludendorff intents for an offensive in the region. Although Ludendorff and the Austro-Hungarian General Staff Chief Konrad von Hotzendorf favored an encirclement operation attacking the extreme northern and southeastern flanks of the salient, just as the Stavka feared, Falkenhayn vetoed this to the grounds of the Central Powers' logistical limitations when confined to slow the advance along the major railway lines. Commanders in the Russian Field Army in Poland had already worked to persuade the Stavka to order a withdrawal from the salient, but the Stavka had felt unable to take such bold moves due to the political implications. The Stavka also did not permit tactical withdrawals within the salient, such as the Second Army's proposal to withdraw behind the Vistula, forcing the field armies to hold tactical disadvantages or even indefensible positions. Despite heavy initial resistance, the Garlow-Tarnów offensive of May and June 1915 eventually resulted in a series of tactical breakthroughs, and the Mackinson's army crossed the San River and retook the Austro-Hungarian fortress of Przemysl. The Russians leaving the Galician capital of Lwów on the 22nd of June. At this point, the Stavka began planning a retreat from the Polish salient as the Russian forces in the south of Poland withdrew northwards to the new defensive lines anchored at the Vistula River and the fortress of Igranogov. Between the 23rd and the 22nd of June, the Germans established bridgeheads across the Dniester to the south, but were halted by the Russian counterattacks in the east in July. More worries for the Stavka, the German 10th Army and the Nijmegen Army pressed through the extreme north to the end of Courland. Although there was nothing worth defending in that area, the Stavka felt pressure to defend it on the principles and so created a new army to defend the region. When this army was defeated and pushed back to the Courland, the Stavka's overestimation of the German logistical capabilities led him to fear that these advantages could be used as a springboard for further advances. It was feared that the further successful advances in the north, combined with the fresh offensive in the south, could lead to the encirclement of the entire Polish salient. Overestimation of German naval capabilities also led for the fears of the offensive that would thrust through the Polsk and into St. Petersburg, and would give aid to the amphibious landings to the capital itself. Due to the heavy losses of the Garlish-Tarnow offensive, the Russian army as a whole was a 1 million combat troop, roughly about 30% short of its normal strength of 1,800,000 combat troops, as well as being exposed to positions in the Polish salient. The Russian field armies at this time were critically short on modern weapons and ammunition for all kinds, artillery, machine guns, and even rifles. In the words of David Lloyd George, then the British Prime Minister of Munitions, the Russians were inferior in equipment and serious shell deficiency were quite unable to reply. Retreat was the only way to open themselves to save their armies from complete destruction. The obsolete fortresses of Novogradsky, Ivanograd, Grodno, Auschwitz, and the Dashki that were on or near the front lines at the time contained considerable artillery, including some modern types, and it was hoped that these could compensate for the temporary weakness of the infantry and render the Igranogov-Lubin-Kelm line defensive. On the 13th of July, the armies of the Central Powers opened up a new offensive across the entire front. By the 17th of July, the forces at Galowitz had been in the center north and taken 80% of losses, and although they had only been forced back some 8 kilometers, they had retreated across the Narew to avoid total annihilation. The Stavka now believed that the encirclement of the Poland salient was inevitable without the immediate withdrawal of troops, and so ordered for the abandonment of defensive lines along the Narew and the Vistula, trusting in the fortresses could be covered in the retreat of the forces. By the 13th of July again, the entire southwest wing had been pushed back 160 kilometers to the Bug River, leaving only a small portion of Congress of Poland in the Russian hands. anchored in Warsaw and the Ivangorod fortress. On the 22nd of July, armies of the Central Powers crossed the Vistula River. In August, the Russian Fourth Army left the Ivangorod fortress with the continuing Russian retreat. Warsaw became isolated, and the German 12th Army under Gausswitz seized the opportunity and conquered it on the 4th and 5th of August. New attacks by the German 8th, 10th, and 12th Armies moving forward out of Prussia soon caused this entire front to collapse, sending the entire northern end of Russian lines streaming backwards, eventually forming a loon line of the north-south, but about the pre-war eastern Prussian border. The Germans, having received considerable reinforcements, took Bredsdorf on the 25th of August. On the 19th of September, Hindenburg forces captured Villa. Critically on the strength due to the battle casualties and the practical disease, the German advance was halted by the Russian counterattacks in late September. The new front line ran from the Baltic Sea to the Romanian border by the way the Belarusian fortress and the disease-ridden Pripyat marshes. The new line was roughly in the line of the Raga, Jabushka, Gaburg, Walishishka, Pinsk, Duna, Templople. On the 22nd of August 1915, Tsar Nicholas II took advantage of the Savska's blunders in losing so many troops to the Central Powers offensive and the retreating when it was too late to effectively nurture its power by removing Grand Duke Nikolai Nikoletsky from his post as its head, taking the direct control of the army.